God, I love you, and I praise you. It's in your holy, matchless name I pray. Can everyone say amen? Amen. You may be seated.
Well, good morning, everyone, and happy New Year. I do want to preface this message this morning. I have been praying about this message and thinking of it and working on it for well over a month. And it's interesting how God's providence and just how God knows and works things out, that it amazes me every single time. So this morning, I want to talk about what do we do when God disappoints you? What do you do when you're disappointed by God? Now, I could sit here, because I'm a pastor, I can sit here and say, I got it all together. I'm never disappointed. I'm never upset. I'm always happy. I always have a smile on my face. But the truth is, there are times where I feel like I've been disappointed by God. So what do you do when that happens? Because we all have that moment. It can last an hour. It can last a day. It can last months. It can last years. But we all have had this experience where it's just not lining up. We believe in God. We expect him to do great things. We serve God. We love God. But it's just not lining up. Last year, in fact, I had one of those experiences. And I don't have them often. It's not like I have them all the time. But I did have one of those experiences. It happened back last June, early July. My wife and I, we went on a 10-day vacation with just her and I. That does not normally happen. We have 4 kids, so it's hard to get away for any amount of time. But we were able to fly in our in-laws, my in-laws, her parents, and they were able to stay with our kids for 10 days. And so we got a chance to fly to the Dominican Republic, and we stayed at this beautiful resort, and it was a lot of fun. I didn't miss my kids until about day 4. Day 4. Day 1, you're traveling. Day 2, you're like, man, I'm exhausted. Day 3, you have a lot of fun. Day 4, you're like, man, I really do. I miss my kids. I miss being around my kids. But I still had 6 more days to go, so whatever. So we're sitting here and we're having a great time. And then around day 7 or day 8, I started to get a pain in my side. So for those of you that don't know, I had a kidney transplant back in 2019. And so I had a pain in my side, and me being me, I ignored it. I was like, that's nothing. That's just gas. And so I just kept going the whole time. And I had a great time. We fly back home, I get back into the swing of things, and I'm wondering what this pain is, but I'm trying to ignore it because I'm being myself, which is dumb. I'm trying to ignore this pain. Now, one of the things that happens with a kidney transplant is that you have to be monitored all the time. And so one of the ways they monitor me is they send a nurse out either to my house, or sometimes they'll come here to the office, or I have to go see them, and they draw your blood just to see where your levels are, just to make sure that everything is okay. And this was a Tuesday morning, and she comes in right before staff meeting. It takes her about 10 or 15 minutes. She comes back to my office, she draws the blood, and she leaves. Now, usually, that's the end of it. They'll draw the blood. I won't hear anything from them for a month. But she took that blood around 9:15 that morning. By the end of the day, I'm getting a phone call from my kidney transplant coordinator. Her name is Kelly. Now, I know you guys don't know Kelly, but Kelly is not someone that you want to mess with. Number 1, you don't want to call from Kelly. You do not want to call from Kelly. But number 2, she is extremely, I don't want to say forceful, persistent. Hi, Kelly. She's very, very persistent. So much so that if I don't answer the phone, she calls my wife. They text each other. They know each other. So if something's going on and I don't respond fast enough to Kelly, she is going to hunt down my wife. So she is that type of person. So when I saw her number come across my screen, I was like, uh-oh, this isn't good. I thought I missed like a medication or an appointment or something. And she called and she said, hey, we got your results back. I said, that was quick. She said, yeah, I know that doesn't normally happen. But we got your results back, and your numbers look really, really out of whack right now. So we need you to come in tomorrow. I said, tomorrow? She said, yes, like immediately. So I went to Pastor Rob's office. I told him what was going on. He prayed for me. I get down there Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning, they're checking me out. They're doing a whole bunch of tests. They're doing kidneys. They're looking at my heart. They're drawing blood. I mean, I was there for hours while they're trying to figure out what was going on. So she comes back after all the tests are ran, probably about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and she says, hey, your body's rejecting your kidney. It's not something you want to hear when you have a kidney transplant. Your body is rejecting your kidney. We need to have you have surgery immediately. I said, what? Slow down. Why do I need to have surgery? She said, so what's going on is that your immune system, for whatever reason, even though we've been shutting it down for these past 3 years, decided to, I guess, wake up. And so it found your kidney. And so what it did, it started to attack your kidney. And there's two types of kidney rejection. There's an acute kidney rejection, and there's another form. And you want the acute one. But there's another form of rejection as well. And we don't know what type it is, so we need you to come in and have surgery so that we can shut down your entire immune system, start feeding you full of liquids and all kinds of things. And so, once it happens, and I'm sitting here in the doctor's office. It looks something like this. I'm sitting here in the office, and yeah, there I am. See, look at that. Nice. But I'm sitting here in this office waiting for surgery, and what's going through my mind at this moment is like, what in the world is going on? I mean, I'm not the fittest person, but I've been working out constantly. I've been eating right. I try to watch everything. I take my medication on time, and that's hard for me anyway. But I do all of these things. I'm like, there's no way I have to go through this. So I sit there, they do the surgery, and then they stick this long tube in my neck. You can't see the whole thing. You just see the very end of it, but on the inside, it is a foot long, and it's in my neck all the way out here. And this is so that they can replace my blood and everything else in my body. And so I'm sitting here going through this procedure, and it's with this big machine, and it's doing all of these things. And I'm sitting here, and I'm thinking, wow, here I am again. Here I am, a pastor. I get to preach. I love what I do, but I'm sitting here, a man that really believes God is going to do whatever he says he's going to do, he'll do it. I'm sitting here disappointed in God. How in the world am I back here again? I've been here before. I've been through all the surgeries. I've done through all the things. God, I'm serving you the best that I know how. Why in the world am I still dealing with this? Why don't you just go ahead and take it from me? Why don't you go ahead and take care of it instead of me sitting here disappointed? What do you do when you're disappointed? Now, here's the thing. I am super excited about 2013. I'm expecting God to do great things in my family. I'm expecting him to do great things here in Orlando North. I'm expecting God to do great things for you. But what do you do when you're disappointed? It sounds like I'm going through puberty. So 2022 has come with a lot of challenges. For Rob, it was great. For me, not so great. 2022 for me was really, really hard. And there were times where I felt disappointed, I felt discouraged, I was upset, I was confused. I'm like, God, what do I do? So this morning, we're going to talk about what do you do when God doesn't meet your expectations. Now, in life, we all have expectations. Some of us thought we would grow up to be doctors. Some of us thought we would grow up to be lawyers or teachers or nurses. Ohio State fans thought that we would never lose to Michigan, but crazier things have happened. But this is what you do when you grow up. You have these expectations. And if I'm honest, we also have expectations of God, what God is like. We all think we have this idea or this expectation of what God is like. We have these ideas or these expectations of what God is not like. We have these ideas or these expectations of how God communicates, how he talks, when we pray. We have all of these expectations, but you're not alone. And that's the encouraging thing about the Bible. No matter what you're going through, there is a story in there somewhere of someone who's already been through it or who's already going through it. So this morning, we are going to be looking at 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 8 through 14. Now, before we start reading that, I want to give you a little bit of background of what's going on right now. So 2 Kings chapter 5, we are going to be introduced to a guy named Naaman. Now, Naaman is just not any ordinary guy. He is the commander of the army of Syria. At this point in Israel's history, Syria is their enemy. Syria is fighting Israel. They're winning pretty much. They're pillaging the land. They're taking all their money. They're taking everything that they have. And Naaman is the guy responsible for it. Now, what's interesting is that God is the one that is blessing Naaman to do this. In 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 1, this is what it says about Naaman. It says, Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master and in high favor, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was a mighty man of valor, but here's the kicker. He was a leper. Naaman was a leper. Now, when you hear the word leper, it's not the Hansen's disease that some people might think. Leprosy back in those days was something completely different. So leprosy back in those days, you can find it in Leviticus chapter 13. It talks about what leprosy looks like. And so the skin is white, but then you have these boils, and then your flesh and is exposed, and it's raw. So you've got all these sores, and you're open. And so this great man, this guy had leprosy. Now, in that culture, when you had that kind of disease, they try to keep you apart. And more certain than not, they would put you in concentration camps. They would separate you because they did not want that disease to spread. Now, I'm not going to compare it, but we did experience something similar to that in 2020. Definitely in the beginning stages of COVID, when nobody knew what COVID was, everybody was freaking out. We had no idea what to expect. What did they tell us to do? They said, shelter in place. Stay away from everybody else except for who you know, shelter in place, because we don't want this thing to spread. We don't know what's going on. So the best way to do this is to make sure that you're not around anybody else. So that's what you usually have to do when you have leprosy. Now think about this. Though Naaman is the great valiant warrior, he is right next to the king. He has the king's ear. He has all of this popularity. He is the man of the hour. He has leprosy. He's got everything going for him. But I bet when he was walking the streets, people are still talking because he is a leper. They're looking at him sideways like, what is he doing here? He should be separated. He should be not here, but he's here. And so what do you do? Naaman, this great guy, this great warrior, has leprosy. Now, during his journey, during his conquest, when he was fighting Israel, he was taking people, and one of these people that he took was a little girl. And for whatever reason, Naaman liked this little girl, so he sent this little girl to work for his wife. And so one day, this girl's talking to Naaman's wife, and she says, I wish my master Naaman could go and meet the prophet in Israel. Because if he's with the prophet in Israel, he could be healed. So she gets excited. She tells Naaman, she says, Naaman, look, there's this guy in Israel. Yeah, I know what you were doing there, but there's this guy in Israel that you should go see. I'm told that he could heal you of your leprosy. So Naaman gets excited, and he goes to the king. He goes to the king and says, look, king, there's this guy that I'm hearing about in Israel that can heal me of my leprosy. The king also gets excited. And so they decide that he is going to go and see this prophet in Israel. He's going to go see him. Even though he's been conquering it, he's been fighting this place, he is going there now to go and see this prophet. And so what does he do? So he packs up everything that he has. He has 750 pounds of silver. He has 6,000 shekels of gold. He has 10 sets of clothes. And in that day, that 750 pounds of silver and all that gold is around $6.5 million. So he's packing all this up. He's like, I'm going to go buy this thing. Like, if it's not going to happen, I'll pay for it. And then the king writes a letter. He writes a letter to the king of Israel. And so he loads everything up, and he's headed that way. He goes and he sees the king. The king sees him coming. Now picture this. This guy, Naaman, you know who he is because he's already conquered most of your land. And you're thinking right now, oh, here we go again. Here we go again. What are we going to do? He shows up at his doorstep. And he has his entourage with him. He has all this gold. He has everything. And then he approaches him with the letter. And that's 2 Kings chapter 5 and verse 7. And this is what the king does when he receives the letter. And when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, am I God to kill and to make alive, that this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? Only consider and see how he's seeking a quarrel with me. He's like, there is no way that you are sending your top general, your top guy, to come and ask me to cure him of leprosy. Nobody can do that. I'm not God. I can't make you alive. I can't make you dead. I cannot heal you of this disease of leprosy. If that was true, we wouldn't have all these camps. I wouldn't have to separate everyone because they would be healed already. But you are sending your main guy here to say, heal me of leprosy. And when I can't do it, what are you going to do? You're going to wipe us out. That's what you're looking for. That's really what you're looking for, isn't it, king? And so the king of Israel, he's distraught. Naaman is sitting there frustrated, like, I thought I thought I was going to be able to find this prophet so that I can get healed. Now, we don't know how long that lasted, but it had to be a couple of days because somehow Elisha gets a hold of this story. He's like, king, why didn't you just send him my way? So this is where we're going to pick it up in 2 Kings chapter 5 and we're going to read verses 8 through 14. It says, but when Elijah, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent to the king saying, why have you torn your clothes? Let him come now to me that he may know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and stood at the door of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a messenger to him saying, go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean. But Naaman was angry and went away saying, behold, I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call upon the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and cure the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. But his servants came near and said to him, my father, it is a great word the prophet has spoken to you. Will you not do it? Has he actually said to you, wash and be clean? So he went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan according to the word of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. So picture this. You're Naaman. You have this huge entourage with you. You got all this money, you got all these clothes, you have all this prestige, all this notoriety, and you're probably feared in Israel because they know who you are. And you leave the palace because the king can't do it. You're going to see the prophet. And you roll up to the prophets, and it's not a palace, it's a house. And it's probably a little gated house. And there are probably people staring, looking at Naaman, because you don't usually see that often, all this coming to a prophet's house, especially not Naaman. We know who you are, Naaman. What are you doing here? And so he gets out, and he goes, and he expects to be greeted by the prophet. Now, I don't want to say Elisha was petty, but all I'm going to say is that he didn't answer the door. He sent a messenger to answer the door for Naaman. Now, he knows who Naaman is. He's like, I'm not even going to answer the door. Why don't you go tell him what I said? So he tells Naaman, hey, I want you to go wash in the Jordan. And then he gets upset. Now, I understand why Naaman got upset. So let me tell you about the Jordan River. The Jordan River at that time was extremely dirty. It's like the toilet bowl. It's disgusting. You have all this trash in this river. And he said, I want you to go dip yourself 7 times in this nasty, disgusting, vile place, and then you'll be clean. I want you to wash in this trash, and then somehow, when you're washing in this trash, you're going to end up clean. And Naaman gets angry, like, there's no way. I came all this way. I traveled this far with everything that I have, and you're telling me to go wash in some dirty toilet bowl river. Aren't there better rivers in Damascus that for people like me, like I can go wash in and be clean? There's got to be somewhere better than the Jordan River for me to wash in. So he goes away angry. He's like, there is no way. I don't believe this guy. We're leaving. So him and his entourage, they're leaving, and they're like, wait a minute, you got to be kidding me. You've been looking this whole time trying to get healed of your leprosy. You brought $6.5 million with you. You brought 10 sets of clothes. We traveled with you all this way, and now that he's asking you to do something as simple as wash in the Jordan River, you're not going to do it. Like, that's impossible. You should go and do what he asked you to do. So Naaman was upset about the Jordan River, but let me tell you why Naaman was really upset. And this is going to be point number 1. God rarely meets our expectations. So around verse 11, Naaman is talking, and he says, I thought that when I showed up, that Elisha was going to come. He was going to wave his hand over me, and he was going to cure Naaman the leper. Naaman, the great leper, he was going to cure me. He was going to put on a show for me. I was going to be able to see him do something great, something amazing. I wanted to see a huge miracle, but it didn't happen. He got disappointed. He expected something that he didn't receive. How many times do we limit God because he doesn't show up the way that we expect him to show up? God, I want you to perform this miracle. Great, go do this. No, God, I don't think you hear me. I'll climb the highest mountain for you. I'll fast 82 days. God, what do you need? I want you to sweep the floor. What? No, there's no way. I traveled all this way, prayed all this time, fasted this long for you to say, go and sweep the floor. I wanted you to do something great. I'm trying to do something great. But what I need you to do is sweep the floor. You see, when I was sitting there disappointed in that seat, I was like Naaman. I'm afraid to admit it. I was like Naaman. I sat there and I was upset. I'm like, God, there's no way that I have to go through this again. I've seen you do great and miraculous things. You've done it for me, so why don't you just go ahead and do it again? Why don't you do it again? You can. So I went through that. I was crying. I was upset. I was afraid. This whole time, I'm begging God to do something, all while he was actually doing it. It just wasn't meeting my expectations. So Naaman shows up, and he's disappointed because his expectations are not being met. He's expecting a show. And part of me, I get it. And I said earlier that I wrote this a month ago. I've been praying about it, been fasting about it, and then our friend Christy passes away. I can't tell you how long we prayed, fasted, or cried, or begged for God to do something. No, he did. He did. And all this is not an attack on God's character, because God is God. God is faithful. God is true. But what it is where are our expectations when it comes to God? So I wrote it a month ago, and then Pastor Rob sends me a message and saying, Christy passes away. And I wish I could sit here and say, I was full of faith and said, I know God is going to do something through this. But that's not my first thought. My first thought was, man, I'm disappointed. Our girls are friends. I'm disappointed. I don't know how to handle it. You see, God was doing something different than what I expected him to do. I mean, nobody prays not expecting an answer. Nobody fasts not expecting an answer. You expect God to answer. You expect him to do something. And do you know why? Because in the back of your mind, you know God is faithful. You know God is true. Otherwise, you wouldn't be praying about it. Otherwise, you wouldn't fast for it. You expect God, when you pray, to do something in your family. You expect him to do something in your marriage. You expect him to do something in your relationships. You expect him to do something in your health. Why do you expect him to do that? Because you know he can. But the problem is, 9 times out of 10, it's not the way we want it to happen. When God doesn't meet our expectations, it's not that he has failed us. You know what he's doing? He's testing our obedience. What did I tell you to do? Well, God, you told me to go dip 7 times in this river. Okay, go do that. But God, I need an answer. God, I've been praying this long. I've been fasting this long. I've been looking this long. I've been serving you for years. God, I want you to do this for me. I need you to do this for me. God, I need to hear from you. You are hearing from me. Go do what I told you to do. And then let's see what happens. Once you accomplish what I told you to do, then we can move on to the next step. God rarely meets our expectations. And it happens all the time. The greatest story in the whole Bible, the whole reason that we have this story is because of the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus. Just think about it. The children of Israel, they're sitting here, they're expecting a king, they're expecting someone great, and then they get their king, but it's not like they expected it. And once he got here, they expected him to rule over Rome, but it didn't happen. What did he do? He died on a cross. Not what they expected. Not at all what they expected. They're still waiting for their expectation. They missed the greatest, most important moment in history, not because they weren't looking for it, but because it didn't come in the way that they expected it. So in 2023, are we going to miss what God has for us simply because it's not meeting our expectations? Because it can happen. God rarely meets our expectations. But then I want you to see his response. So the second thing that's so important about this is our response to what God says is extremely important. So Elijah does not meet his expectations. He's like, there's no way that this can be true. There's no way that this can be real. There's no way that this can be right. And he's going along, and his guys are with him, and they're saying, hey, why don't you go and try it out? I mean, at least go try it out. Go ahead and go to the Jordan River. Go wash yourself. Let's see what happens. What's the worst that can happen? I mean, you covered in, well, I won't say that. But you know, you're covered in junk, but at the end of the day, I mean, it can't be any worse than what you already have. Now, can you imagine what's running through Naaman's head? He has leprosy. The pain of what he had to go through just to travel there, to hear those words. And part of him had to be thinking, if I go with these open sores in the Jordan River, it's going to kill me. I got all this junk, and you want me to cover all these sores and these boils in this junk? Yeah, no way. It's not going to happen. Not at all. Not to me, not to Naaman. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I can do? There's no way I'm going to humble myself and stoop myself so low that I'm going to go wash in somewhere as common as the Jordan River. God, do you know who I am? There's no way. That was his first response. Naaman had two choices at that moment. He could have left and never been healed, or he could obey and watch what can happen. All of 2023, we are going to be faced with those two things. Are you going to obey and do what God has told you to do? Oh, or are you not going to listen to it? Are you not going to do it? That's it. All 2023. That's all it's going to boil down to. So Naaman had two choices, and he's like, I'm leaving. I'm not going to do it. I'm leaving. For sure, I'm out of here. But thankfully, he listened to those that are around him. It's important who you have around you in 2023. Extremely important who you surround yourself with in 2023. I tell my kids all the time, it is so important who you hang out with that I'm invested in it. I need to know all your friends. I need to know their parents. You can't even text them or call them unless I talk to their parents first. There's no way that's going to happen because it's that important who you surround yourself with, because they can either make or break a situation, just like what was going on with Naaman. If he would have had someone else in his corner and they told him to leave, he would have missed his miracle. But that's not what happened. He listened to him. He goes down to the Jordan River, and it's not a private place. The Jordan River is public, and they all know who Naaman is. So he pulls up to the Jordan River. He looks at it. He's like, am I going to actually do this? Me, Naaman, am I going to stoop myself down so low that I'm going to wash in this common, disgusting, dirty, infested water? So he goes down, and it says dip 7 times in the water. Now, I know that when we read those words, it probably doesn't register what's actually going on here. But let me elaborate on what that looks like. So Naaman is going down to the water. Everyone's around him. And he's like, man, I got to get into this water. So he probably had to strip down to his underwear. I'm going to leave it there. He probably has underwear, but he's got all these sores and these boils, and everyone is looking at Naaman, the great conqueror, the guy that has been here and conquered your land, the guy that has probably killed somebody you've known. He's taken all your money. He's disrupted your whole economy. He's wrecked everything, and now he has to be in front of those very same people that he has conquered. He's probably nervous. He's probably afraid. Part of him probably thinks it's a setup. He's like, yeah, I'm going to do this, and they're just going to take me out. But he has to be vulnerable at that very moment. And so he does it, and he sits there, and he's like, okay, I'm going to do this. Can you imagine as he's walking with all these open sores and boils in the water? He dips down the first time. When he dips down, he comes back up. He's like, nothing's different, but it's burning, and there's probably a whole bunch of junk in his mouth and his eyes, and he's wondering, is it actually going to work? Is it actually going to happen? Am I actually going to be healed? He dips down the second time, and the second time he comes up, he's like, this isn't going to work. There's no way this is going to work. There's junk all over me. I'm burning. It's stinging. God, get me out of here. He goes down the third time. He comes back up. And at this point, he's probably doubting the whole thing. Why did I listen to that crazy guy that didn't even answer the door? Why did I listen to the guy that wouldn't even take money? I'm Naaman. I'm used to having these great offerings. I'm used to having people do these great things for me, but yet here I am fully exposed around all these people. Half of them probably hate me. The other half are there for the money. I probably have about 2 or 3 people that really, really know Naaman. And now I have to dip down in this dirty water again. He does it the 4th time. And this time, nothing's changed. He can't believe it. I'm doing what you told me to do, but why is it not changed? Why am I still in the same situation? Why am I still focused and still looking just like this? I still have all the sores. I still have all the boils. I'm still in pain. God, what are you doing? You told me to do it. I'm trying to do it, and you're not doing it. He dips down a fifth time. He goes a sixth time. And at that point, he probably wants to stop. I mean, who could blame him? Here I am in this infested water. I'm trying to do what I think God is telling me to do. I know he said 7, but God, it doesn't look like you're doing anything. You didn't do anything for the first 6. It doesn't look like you're doing anything at all. It doesn't look like you're answering my prayer. God, I am disappointed. I'm sitting here for the 6th time in this dirty water. I'm washed myself in this thing 6 times. I'm probably bleeding and burning and in pain, and yet you're not doing anything. God, where are you? Why are you not answering my prayer? Why are you not meeting my expectation? God, why are you not doing it? At this minute, I pictured those 2 people that really know Naaman probably whispering to him, hey, he said 7. He's like, yeah, I know he said 7, but do you see where I'm at? Do you see my situation? Do you know what it's like to be walking around as a leper? Do you know what it's like to have everything, but at the same time have nothing? Yes, we do know, but he said 7. Naaman, we've been with you this whole time. We know the pain that you've been going through, but you have to go one more time. He bends down the 7th time. And I can only imagine the 7th time he's coming up expecting the same thing. But he comes up the 7th time, and his skin is cleared up. All the trash, all the junk is still there because he still had to wash himself in that river. But he is clean. Can you imagine what those people around there would have thought? So Naaman comes out, he's completely healed, he's completely clean. I'm sure that he is a mess. I would be a crying mess, it'd be awful. So I'm sure that he's crying with all this crap and stuff coming out of his mouth. It's probably disgusting. But he's healed. He's healed, he didn't stop. Naaman didn't stop. Now I gotta confess to you that more times than not, I can be Naaman. I wish I was not, but I can be Naaman. When I was in college for the first time, I was going through school, and I started in 2005. By 2007, I was the fastest moving student in their history. Do you know what I did? I stopped. Quit. Dropped out. And one day, I'm sitting in Anderson, Indiana, at my in-laws' place, and I'm sitting here praying, God, what are you not doing? Why are you not doing what I need you to do? And there was a small whisper. I told you to finish school a long time ago. I said, what? No, that's not, I didn't hear that right. There's no way I'm going back. There is no way. He said, no, go ahead and finish school. I said, no, I'm not gonna happen. Not gonna happen at all. So I'm talking to Bethany. We were dating at the time, and we had Sunday dinner at their place all the time. And I'm sitting here and I'm talking to Bethany about it, and then she says, weren't you supposed to finish school a long time ago? I said, no, there's no way. But that day I decided to go ahead and enroll back in school. I had to start all over again. So I enrolled in school in 2014. I graduated in 2017. That was with my bachelor's degree. In 2017, I moved down here to Florida. After we completed everything, I moved down here to Florida. God doing the first step. I didn't think it. I did what God said do, and then he moved. It's funny how that works. In 2017, we're down here, and I feel that same thing. I want you to go back to school. This time I didn't ignore it. I jumped right in. I went back to school, got my master's. In the process of me getting enrolled here and going for my master's, we end up here at Orlando North. In the middle of what God is telling me to do, he's already moving. So I'm not saying this for everyone, but there might be something that's holding your prayer back. It could be you. Are you going to do what God has asked you to do? Or are you going to let your expectations rob you of what God can really do? So we don't know the challenges of 2023. We don't know what it's going to look like. We all have our expectations. We all think we have an idea of what it's going to look like. We all know that we have great plans. Like for me, I got great plans for my family. 60% of them might not happen because I make big goals, but we'll figure it out. But one thing is for sure. I know that if I'm obedient to what God says, God will be faithful to what he said. And so that's what happened to Naaman. And that's really what happens to all of us. If we are obedient, in the process, God starts to change. In the process, God starts to develop. In the process, God starts to shape. For some of you, you want God to do something great in your marriage. And maybe he said it starts with counseling. For some of you, you want God to do something great in your health. God, help me get healthy this year. Okay, well, let's put down a few of those donuts. Like, it starts simple. You know the great thing about God? Everything he asks us to do is usually simple. It starts simple. Because the thing is, if God can't trust you to do the simple thing, there's no way he's going to trust you to do something greater. If God can't trust you to sweep the floor, he's not going to trust you to get on the stage. If God can't trust you to put down the donuts, he's not going to be able to trust you with good health. Why? Because you're going to ruin it. If you can't take the simple step in your relationship to do counseling to help you get better, why would he give you a better relationship? You're just going to ruin it. Why? Because you're not doing the thing he told you to do. Most, if not all, of our disappointments about God come from our expectations. We have unmet expectations about God, and then we want to get frustrated, angry, upset, and wonder why God is not doing what he said he was going to do. Oh, he can't be real because he's not answering my prayer. Yeah, but he told you to sweep the floor, and you're not doing it. Yeah, I know, I heard that part, but I need him to work over here. I need you to do this, God. Okay, I can do that, but first, you got to go and dip 7 times in the Jordan River. How many times have we seen someone and we get jealous? Let me phrase it. How many times have I seen someone and I've gotten jealous? There are times where my friends were doing what they were supposed to do. They were in ministry and I was not at all. And they were doing what they were supposed to do. And then as I was reading this story, God reminded me. He said, I didn't ask you to do what they were doing. I asked you to do what I told you to do. So maybe they had to dip 2 times in the Jordan River. You don't stop at 2. You got 5 more to go. Don't compare how long they had to do it to what you had to do. You have no idea what I'm trying to do in you. And if you cannot be obedient by going and dipping 7 times like I said, then there is no way I'm going to be able to heal you because you stopped the process. So here in 2023, this is what we need to do. And this is what it all comes out to. This is what it all boils down to. In 2023, we have to let go of our expectations of God, of what he's going to do, and just allow God to do. Stop placing expectation of what you think God is going to do, and just allow God to do. We only have one responsibility in this whole thing: obedience. The Bible says obedience is better than sacrifice. Obedience is worship. Obedience is love. Case in point, I cannot say that I love my wife, but then go out here and never listen to her, ever. Number 1, it'll get me in trouble. But number 2, do you think that I really love her if I never, ever listen to her? You can't. And then what would it look like if I get upset? I'm like, you're not loving me right. Like, you're not listening to me at all. I'm trying to love you. I'm trying to help you. But what you're not doing, you're not listening. But I need you to do this. I know what you need, but we have these steps to take. So in 2023, this is what we're going to do. It can be a great year. It might not be a great year. We don't know. But what we do know is that there's something that God has for each and every one of you in here this morning. And all he's asking you to do is to take the first step. Be obedient in what he's asked you to do, and then God will work out the rest. Let me pray. God, I thank you so much for this opportunity this morning. God, because we all in here at some point have had our disappointments or hang-ups or these things that just weigh us down. But I pray that this morning we would release you from our expectations of you, God. And we would just allow you to be God. We don't know what that looks like. We don't know what that sounds like. We don't know what that journey is, but God, you do. And so I just pray that you would help us to hear what that first step is. For some of us, it might be dipping one time. For some of us, it might be 22 times. We don't know. But let us not stop in the process of doing what you've asked us to do. Because God, if we are obedient to what you said, you'll do exactly what you said you would do in the process.